Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to another edition of the Pure Digital Passion Podcast with me, Moses Kemi Barrow. I want to tell you how I came to know about my guest today, because the path to his conversation itself is part of the story. Over the last few months, a product called Claw has been making waves in the global agentic AI space, not in the way that VC-backed startups make noise with press releases and funding announcements, but rather in a quieter, more credible way that happens when something actually works and practitioners start talking about it. And OpenClaw, really, I think in the last few months, you've probably heard about it. Maybe you've never used it, but it really is sort of forming the blueprint of what AI as we know it could become. It's an AI agent that works 24/7 on your dedicated infrastructure. Many people are installing it on their MacBooks and Mac computers. It runs on a 24/7 basis. It wakes up every 30 minutes, checks your inbox, your calendar, your Slack, your CRM, and it takes action on your behalf as if it were you. You also find that without asking, it can act as an executive assistant for you. It never sleeps, it never forgets. And behind the deployment, this is where Denis and his business are creating something truly impressive. Denis grew up here in Kenya. He left for Houston, Texas, where he studied electrical engineering at the University of Houston and earned his master's in computer science at Rice University, which is one of the best universities in the US. He spent a decade at Texas Instruments. He worked at BMC Software, Google Cloud, and Microsoft. So you can see that his credentials are impressive. And he also led VP level roles in marketing and technology at the US West Coast. And then he decided to come back home, being that, as a diaspora person, he saw the opportunity to come back to Kenya. Since he returned, he's built a company called Agentic that's focused on AI agents. He's also doing GPU hosting infrastructure for AI and also next generation business systems. He's built a company called DBX Engine, which is an AI-powered prospecting and audit system helping marketing agencies globally finding and converting SME clients. He's also now one of the leading deployment and managed care operators for OpenClaw through his platform called ClawFolks.com. The question I'm going to explore today is not just what Denis is building and what he's done in the past, but it is why he came back and why he sees Nairobi in a way that he could not see Seattle, and what it means for Kenya and Africa in the business of building AI infrastructure rather than just buying access to it. Denis, welcome to the Pure Digital Passion Podcast.
Thank you, Moses. Thank you for having me.
So, Denis, you and I think, connected a few months ago on, if I'm not wrong, LinkedIn.
Yes.
I think you reached out.
Yes.
I looked at your credentials and we started having this long dialogue for a while.
Yes.
I'd like us to go into your origin story so that people on this podcast, watching or listening, can really get a sense of who you are, your background, how did you grow up, and sort of the steps that took you to the US to eventually getting to where you are today. Yes. Maybe we can just start there from your early days. How did you get here?
Absolutely. And thank you. Thank you. First of all, very kind introduction. So I really appreciate it. Yes, I was born here in Kenya, and I was really young when I left.
Okay. How old were you?
Must have been 17 or 16 years
straight out of high school.
Straight out of high school. And so this is the early 2000s. I left to Houston. I had a foundation being part of a very early technology group here in Kenya, known as Nairobi Net. I got my introduction to things like HTML and just very old, very simple kind of systems like that. I learned to program. A few months after I finished high school, I became really good at Python. But those are the kind of dynamics I remember at those moments. But very soon after, I'd gotten a scholarship to go to the United States.
Okay.
And I left around that time. And when I went there, went straight to college and got my degree in electrical engineering. Soon after, I got my master's. So I kind of finished that very quickly and started my career at Texas Instruments. Since then, I moved to BMC Software, which is another kind of enterprise software company, competes with Microsoft in a sense, which is in Houston, Texas as well. And then just kind of progressed from there. Went to Google, where I was the director of engineering for many years. And then also at Microsoft, where I was helping with customer acquisition and kind of signal machine learning. Basically, early AIs, we're creating early AIs that could actually point to the probability of a customer being a customer, so that kind of time is allotted to people, calls and interactions that actually matter. So the AI part is something that I did as part of my master's program. And we always thought, okay, this is a 50-year journey to actually
You're
get
seeing it as really far
very,
out.
very far out. And the concepts were there, but there were more mental concepts, and there was just nothing built. Nothing basically could do something. But around 2012, there was an exhibition of something called ImageNet. ImageNet was a very simple neural network that was meant to basically detect if there's a cat in the picture, right? And it had just shown a lot of promise. And I think that's when there was this kind of shift. There's something here. Neural networks had gone for 30 years where they were basically being termed as just fake news, right? It's not going to work. This is not it. But from that time, so it took about 5 more years until 2017, when I was still at Google, when the famous paper came out.
Yes.
Which is
Transformers,
attention is all you need.
Yes.
And from then, it became a race, right? And nobody really heard about it. I think I just saw the first GPT at 2018, which was GPT.
That far back.
Yes.
Wow.
And it was not great. But once you used it, it just shook your soul a little bit. And you knew that, oh, there's something here. There's intelligence in this little machine, right? And it kind of gave the first sense of the Turing test, which, if you're familiar, is basically the test if a computer can confuse you and you think, is it a computer or human?
It's behaving almost like a human,
yes.
yeah.
So that is basically where my journey kind of led me to. But beyond my career, I also had a business kind of foundation. I had an agency that I did sell around 2009. And then
It's like a marketing agency?
It was a marketing agency at the beginning. And around 2011, I started now an agency that builds marketing software.
Wow.
And that's the one that I've been running for as long as I can remember, but with my career as well. So I kind of juggling these two, but that's really my foundation.
So I want to go back maybe a little bit further back and talk a little bit about kind of like the foundational years, right? I mean, what were you doing at Houston? What did you pick up there? How did that lead into the computer sciences degree at Rice? I think it's important to maybe give our audience that context and how it sort of feeds into what comes next, right? So can you tell us about the sort of the education piece and how that kind of provided that foundational layer to where you are today?
Absolutely. So the foundational layer is, when I left Kenya, I knew that I wanted to go do something in computer science. The electrical engineering was something also I did in high school. Not engineering. I basically was good in physics, math. And so I was looking to do something in that line. And remember, when we finished high school here in Kenya, there used to be a list of the top 3 majors that you could pick.
Correct.
And in America, there's just no such concept. It's what do you want to do? So I had a whole plate to choose from, right? So I went into electrical engineering knowing that I was going to get into computer science. But electrical engineering also is really, it's solid engineering. So I got to learn about microchips and some of that low-level software that actually runs in as close to the metal as possible. So that gave me a lot of depth to basically start from the foundation. And when I went for my master's program, it basically put all that together. So my decision to kind of go down this route has to do with the inspiration I got from Kenya right before I went on there. So.
Okay. Was it difficult doing? I mean, I think Rice is renowned.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering, what was that like? Was, as a kid coming from Kenya, what was that like? Was it difficult? Was it hard? What is that experience like? Because again, it's clearly one of the key steps that takes you to companies like Google.
Absolutely. It's a good question. Right? So Rice University is an Ivy League school, one of Ivy League institutions, but it's really popular for it being a bona fide, basically, research institution.
Okay.
And it's a very profound question. How was it? It was tough because I am a Kenyan kid, I'm starting out, and I immigrated there without my parents. So there's the life aspect of it and the school aspect of it. I was surrounded by a lot of people in the Kenyan community, and I still appreciate that time because it gave me community. Right? But as far as the rigor in going to school, it was not as challenging because at the end of the day, it comes down to math, physics, and your ability to engage with it. Right? The challenge also is just the pace of things, right? The way we learn here in Kenya, there's a lot of rote kind of learning. There it is more of deeper, it's more practical, and a lot of concepts were new. Most of my classmates knew what a PC was.
You were learning for the first time.
I was basically learning PC from on the inside for the first time and all of this. But you catch up very, very quickly. Within the first 2 semesters, I feel like I was caught up. And then you get good by being also in the proximity of people who also are very, very kind of passionate about that. So, and again, one of the advantages of going to an institution like this is also you are very exposed to opportunities. So Texas Instruments will come there on your 3rd year and start pitching what they can be able to do for you. In fact, Texas Instruments paid for my graduate school.
Really?
Yes. They'll tell you,
come in. From the time with Houston University and now when you went?
Yes. Okay. Yes. So they pay for you, and then you basically sign a contract to work for them for a certain amount of time. So, and I was very, very happy to do that because, it's a very expensive school and they were basically just writing checks. But the challenges are more of the transition challenges. But when you're young, at that age, you kind of mold yourself into the life there. And it wasn't so bad after the 2nd year, I'd say.
Okay, nice. Yeah. So clearly, that sort of gives us the linkage between Texas Instruments and Rice. And I remember for me, when I think about Texas Instruments, it's like when I was growing up, my dad was a civil engineer.
Yes.
And I remember these scientific calculators were all Texas Instruments. Yes. I think that's the way we know the brand in Kenya.
Yes.
But obviously, given where you were and the time you were in, what was that like as well in terms of what were you doing there? Because you were there like for 10 years, right?
Yes,
8 years. So, you get in there. Tell us about that 10-year time frame. What are you doing at Texas Instruments?
First of all, good question. When you walk into a company like Texas Instruments, it's a lot of legacy there. A lot of people don't know that Texas Instruments was actually part of the organizations that actually invented the transistor.
The very transistor itself, back in the 40s?
Back in the 40s, around that time. Actually, around that time, yes. But they do have that pedigree of being able to basically be the foundation of the computing revolution that came after. So when you go in there, you know that this is a serious engineering company. And so in Texas specifically, we kind of worked at a fab. A fab is where they actually create the microchips.
Nice.
Clean room. It's something like you've never seen. There's robotics everywhere. When you go in there, you have to take an air shower and just kind of dress up completely. That place is 10 times cleaner than an operating room. There's air flowing constantly. It's just like walking into the future. And remember, this is 25 years ago, right? So that, as a young kid from Kenya, you just say, you get this impact of, do I even belong here, right? That imposter syndrome hits and you're like, is this for me or did I just cheat my way in here? But after a while, you kind of realize it's basically the same technology and the process of making those microchips is months. One of those wafers goes through months of processing and you put in the microwave and put in the oven.
You put the layers on it.
Yes, and you wash it and it goes for more etching. And I know that has basically evolved, but it's a very, very, very kind of intense process. So going in there, again, you're really taking me back. Things are very,
we need to understand the journey.
Absolutely. It's actually fun.
Yeah.
But it gave me, again, that proximity. And that's another important thing I want to kind of reiterate here is you don't just get good. You get good by being in proximity of really, really good people who care, people who design these things. And when you see them doing it, then it becomes almost like natural to you to do it. In fact, one of the reasons why I came back is to hopefully become some of that to maybe some of the younger people here back home, to be able to see the potential and actually see it being executed to give him that kind of ability to do it. Because I even don't understand how I was able to kind of pick up the abilities to even be in competition to kind of like go into some of these kind of really nice companies. But I've always been a tinkerer. I've always been ready to go into uncomfortable places.
Yeah.
I've always been able to kind of do this. And I'm also a good listener. I'm a good student. So that did help, at least for those early years.
What was the work itself? What were you actually doing there?
Good question. When you start out, basically you start with the most basic stuff. So I was basically a floor engineer in the fab, and it'll be just keeping track of the wafer processes, and just basically being an overseer of sorts. But I did go from there. Then I went actually to where there's a lab where the microchips come in, and you write what is called a CMOS. It's a very, very primitive software.
You're taking me back to the PC days.
Yes,
oh my God.
Yes. So you write those little simple kind of Python scripts or just software that basically turns them on. It's just like their little brain. And basically work your way up from there to more complex software. I did work with software from National Instruments that emulates tools. So instead of actually connecting a whole bunch of things, you can actually emulate most of the things that you can connect and just make that connection very simple using software. So it's
like an oscillator, but now digital.
Yes. Okay. So virtual, exactly. So all of that was, so you jump around in Texas Instruments as you're basically kind of going through.
You're progressing through the layers at that point.
Yes. But by the time I had the obligations of working at Texas Instruments, I had fulfilled those. Now I was really thinking about looking for my dream jobs. So I started applying to places like Microsoft and Google and all of this. And I just thought maybe they were just going to say no, right? Because you still feel like I'm their Kenyan kid,
That need for validation, yeah?
Absolutely. And then I just got in. Right.
And what was the first jumping point? Where did you go first?
So the first jumping point, they had an office in Houston that was dealing with the industry there. Houston is a very big...
This is Microsoft?
No.
BMC?
This is the BMC.
Yes, okay.
Right? So there's a big kind of oil industry there. So a lot of those people are clients of some of these software companies. So I was kind of embedded there for a little bit. But eventually I was transferred to Seattle, actually San Jose first, and then Seattle. So I kind of grew up through that system, but they just put me in many different places.
What does BMC do? I think maybe for the benefit of the audience, because there are people here who don't necessarily understand what it is. It's a name I know, but what does BMC actually do?
BMC is enterprise software. They basically have the same enterprise software that Microsoft has, maybe with their own kind of interpretation of it. It is databases. It is some ERP systems, right? They just don't have a very consumer-facing division, just like Microsoft has with Microsoft Office and all of this, which is more consumer-oriented, right? At least prosumer, if you think about it. But that's really who they are. They're fundamentally an enterprise company. They compete with Microsoft, even Google to some extent. And they also do have some specialization to kind of serve some industries that are more in Texas, like the energy industry we talked about. So that's what they are. But they're about the number 3 enterprise company, or maybe number 4 in the world.
Still are?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
And during this time, I imagine that the job changes considerably from what you were doing at Texas Instruments, right?
Yes, it does. But engineering is mostly problem solving. So you walk into a room and you find a bunch of problems they're solving, and they put you in a group. And after a while, you embody these problems, and then you become part of the contributor kind of base. But I would say there's a lot of hardware work being done at Texas Instruments, and then more software work in these other companies. But when you really dig in deep into it, it's really the same thing. It's basically software. It's running after bugs. It's trying to make certain things happen. It is coming up with a roadmap. It boils down to engineering at the end of the day.
Yeah. I think we were discussing this earlier, I think, with you, and I think we were discussing, and I think it came to this realization that really it boils down to this systems thinking,
Yes,
right?
yeah, 100%.
Which, if I understand it correctly, is this idea that you look at a problem, you break it down into its constituent parts,
Absolutely.
and then you see how you can gradually build up to the final
Absolutely.
outcome,
Absolutely.
correct?
And hardware and software really kind of are the same thing, but in different forms.
Yeah.
So it really, yes, it's system thinking. So being able to put them together in the context of this problem you're solving, and also finding an elegance in how you solve some of these problems, because at the end of the day, you're building for people and human beings. So it's putting all those aspects, the human aspect, the soft aspect, and the hard aspects, and just kind of cook some kind of ugali out of it. Yeah.
You know, I love that because in some ways it mirrors what I've been doing for many years, which is, working in the digital marketing space, where predominantly building things like websites is something we've been doing. And I always like to think about the way there's always this tension between creating something that's user-friendly.
Yes.
On the back end, the technology has to be refined and efficient.
Right.
And then you have to think through how do you reconcile the interface at the consumer level or the user level versus the technology. And there's always that tension of finding somewhere that is going to work for all the parties, the almost that
all a sweet spot.
Yeah, finding that balance, right?
Yes.
So I imagine as you're working with teams, that's part of the process.
Yes.
So I'd like to go a little bit more as we speed things up. Is obviously a BMC, then something happens. Yeah, you move from BMC to where?
I moved from BMC to Google. I was a junior engineer at Google, and Google also gives you the opportunity to actually spend sometimes, almost 6 months going through some kind of internal MBA process to be able to really understand that.
Is this the PM thing they do, the product manager thing?
Not really anything, really. The onboarding process there is...
They've got a sort of a standard thing, where for the first 6 months, they just almost like making you fit for work.
Absolutely. And you think about it. It's a big company. It's serving billions and billions of people. So some of the systems that they have in there are pretty complex.
And proprietary too.
Proprietary as well. And you have to immerse yourself in it and really embody it. They also have principles on how to make these things, right? So getting to kind of capture that will make you fuller problem solver if you are able to kind of ingest it and actually embody it. So that actually gave me a very, very good foundation. So I started out there as a junior engineer, basically doing the everyday engineering stuff. But very soon, I was able to climb up into the executive kind of level, and I became in charge of a bunch of partnerships in EMEA. So in Europe, I traveled there a lot. In Middle East and Africa. And of course, we'd say Middle East and Africa, but in Africa, there's just so little. It's basically South Africa and maybe something
At least back then, yeah?
Yes. No, even now, we don't see a whole lot of investment.
We're not really on the radar,
Absolutely.
really.
And I brought that up every meeting I was always the voice saying like, hey, there's just a lot of opportunities. But again, you look at, the business they're doing, we're talking about it's a rounding error sometimes. Maybe they don't have those commitments, right? When you're dealing with Deutsche Bank, the revenues that they're getting from there versus maybe working with some local bank here,
Are you working on the cloud side of things at this point?
Yes. So I'm in the cloud side. I was actually at Google Cloud, and I was specifically in charge of partnerships around maps.
Specifically Google Maps?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes,
okay.
Yes.
Wow.
So Maps had a lot of early AI stuff in there, and you don't see it, but it's what makes the app very, very...
Like that it tells you need to leave for your meeting now.
Yes. So I was in there early. So I more was selling the technology, but I had other engineers, which we call sales engineers, who basically understand the technology very well. So we go in as a team. We are able to create things like sovereign AI, or not sovereign AI, but sovereign cloud, where some countries like Germany would require that you actually have a data center
and a local presence.
Yes, a local presence there.
Okay.
So they are able to kind of negotiate things like that. And but that was a big part of my job. So at a certain point, my fourth year at Google, I'd already stopped doing engineering work. I was more running engineering.
And you're client facing now.
Client facing, have a team of engineers, and even my team of engineers are more of teaching and suggesting that this could be maybe the right setup for this problem.
What was that transition like on two levels? One, you had Google, right? Let's just be very candid about it. I mean, you're almost saying it casually, but what is that moment like realizing I'm now at Google, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is, what is the transition like moving away from being engineering to sales?
Very good question. First of all, moving to Google, anybody who goes to Google, even today, gets a pang, that's just kick of, oh my God, I made Google. It. I remember when they gave me my first email, which says Dbundi at google.com. Not Gmail, but at Google. Kicker, huh? It's something, because now, I was actually telling my family at that time that even if I die today, they'll one day dig through these servers and they'll find my email in here. But it's a profound thing because Google became our generation's IBM, right? So being in there, it's almost like a validation of the work you've done and all of this. So at the beginning, it's even the first year, it is pretty surreal, right? But the transition from being a pure engineer to going into the executive role wasn't as profound, but I'll say that you still are involved in some of the engineering bits. It's just that you're not really in the
you're not in the nuts and bolts anymore.
Absolutely. But you are involved in creating roadmaps. It's being able to validate if these roadmaps are even making sense. So there's a lot of engineering discussion. So it became a lot of conversations, and that happens when you go up the ladder.
Anyway,
you just get into basically being the elder, who validates things, approves things, and all of this, and also being able to articulate that technology, right? How do you speak about this technology in a way that other executives can be able to kind of ingest it? So I was in meetings where I'm on mute, and the big guys, like the head of Google in France, the head of Google in this other place, are really talking. And then a question will come up where they are higher up, they don't want to deal with. Then you see your microphone unmuted.
And you bring the subject matter expertise.
Yes, and then you kind of talk about these things. But that's really the difference. And of course, the pay is better. Yeah, you're doing less and you're getting paid better. But it was basically a natural progression. And again, it's not as shocking because these were my bosses a few years ago in Texas Instruments. So you kind of adopted that way by osmosis in a sense.
Okay. Yeah. So what happens at Google? Because there's a transition that happens from Google elsewhere. I'm curious about that transition because every time I've known somebody who left Google, it's almost like, and I know a few guys here in Kenya, you're almost like you left Google.
Yeah.
And then secondly, as somebody who applied to Google many, many times over the years, and I did actually get shortlisted a few times, but never made it in. It's almost like one of my great regrets that I never worked at Google.
Yeah.
But that's another story for another day. But the point being, whenever somebody leaves Google, it's almost like with a big, you left Google. And I'm almost curious about how that even happens. I'm sure even at a family level, there are probably conversations happening in Kenya around, Denis is at Google.
Yes.
Yeah. And then now Denis is not at Google. So what happens there? What changes?
That's a great question, Moses. No, it's not as bad because we're human beings. So after a certain point, you acclimate to this.
It becomes your day-to-day.
Yes. And then Google, again, I love it. So I don't want to come off as negative here. It's not what it used to be. So that idea you had is really not. But once you get in there, it very soon becomes the big company it is. Very, very big. You don't know most of your workmates. There are thousands, tens and tens of
thousands.
This
thing is scaling up.
It is so huge. And then you kind of get into that friction of a big company. So you're really dealing with other things that are not Google. So I wouldn't say it does wear off and you basically just focus on the work. But at that point, I was not stuck in the idea of Google. I was kind of just trying to do the job. And moving from there to Microsoft was the same. Now I wasn't as excited because I understood, okay, well, this is what I'm getting. But Microsoft, my move there was more of even in my private company, I was more of interested in customer acquisition. There was always this plan of everything that I'm picking up in these companies. How am I going to package it and bring it to Kenya eventually? There was always that thing in the back of
So
my
the back of your mind, you had an entrepreneurial agenda as well.
Yes, but more of not go and do all of these things and come home with nothing. I wanted to bring it in a sense where I can be able to kind of share it. So I actually got into departments, I actually applied into my promotion path. Kind of when I look back now, I wasn't thinking of it the same way, was how do I get in a place that is more useful, where I can learn something that is more universal. Let me know, get into like some niche energy
I get you.
niche that is not really going to be
you wanted something that's
relevant.
transferable.
Absolutely.
Okay. So tell me what's happening here, because you're at Google, you're going to Microsoft, right? I want to understand what makes that transition happen. What is it that you go to do at Microsoft?
Yes.
And then are you saying concurrently at this point in time, there's a entrepreneurial venture happening in the background?
100%.
Yeah?
Yes.
So just break that down for us, please.
This is a weekend thing, sometimes evenings. I've always had an office in Houston, Texas. Again, it's the same office that I sold the creative studio, the marketing agency. And the same office basically became a software company, right? So I did have, I hired a lot of students because, Texas.
So this is like pre-BMC, or where are we now on the timeline?
I think it's just always been there. There was times that it was there, but it was dormant, as you know, sometimes.
Okay.
But you get to a certain point, especially once I got into the admin part of my career, I had more time.
Yes.
So I could be able to hire a manager, I could be able to hire this. But we started building learning systems, learning management systems, which we sold. We sold one to SAP. So these were things that were being done on the side, and it just seemed like it's something that I had to do. This entrepreneurial thing happens with us immigrants, where you always feel like I could lose this job any day. It happens.
So you have a plan B.
There's always a plan B.
Running.
Yes. But I've always also wanted to create quality things like the companies I'm working for. So the little software we made were way ahead of its time. We would push to make it completely future-proof, and that raised attention. I mean, I've been in GitHub for years and years. So
contributing code and
contributing and seeing what other people are doing. I've been in love with the open source movement since my freshman year in college, right? When I learned about Richard Stallman and Linus Torvalds, the founder of Linux. And before I even left Kenya, I knew about Red Hat. Linux.
Yeah, I remember,
And I remember knowing the business model that it's a free software that they just modified and supported it and created $1 billion company. So I've always seen that these extra things that you do on the side as almost like just normal, right? You just, I couldn't, as an immigrant, I couldn't just go home to sleep after a long day. You say, I have an extra 4 hours that I can push into this. And we basically build a company that way, and it's still around. Right. At the very end, we're now less. I still have the software that we've been making, but I have less of that. It became more of a consulting shop,
a services business.
Yes, more firm consulting, being able to kind of create roadmaps for other people, and kind of showing that direction.
So let me get this straight. I really think this is important, because you have a business that's essentially consulting services.
Yes.
That used to be software development.
Yes.
You had a marketing agency of some kind that you then sold prior to that.
Yes.
Right, which you sold to.
The marketing agency was sold to another company in New York. It was called Worry Free Labs. I don't think it's around, but
it was merged into them.
It was something else, yes.
And they bought like your IP, whatever you had.
Our IP and our customers and some of our employees as well. I had to work there for a few months just for the transition.
At that point, are you still employed elsewhere, or?
Yes.
Oh wow!
Yes.
So you're a busy guy.
Everybody's busy in America. Honestly. I can't say I was busy because I knew people who did more than I did. It's really more of basically 16 hours of your day, you can actually split it and do 8.
I get you.
Yeah,
so I'm just curious, because you've got a business you've now sold it. You presumably, I know how much you sold it for. I'm not going to disclose that here, but presumably you don't need to work.
You could say that. But I actually did take some time off, not to
Bit of a sabbatical.
Yeah, took a sabbatical for 2 years and traveled. Yes, but you get bored very quickly,
and you need something to get your teeth into
because
again.
you're still young, and you can go to the beach because you've not been there in years and years. You've spent a decade.
And after a while, you get bored of that too.
Yes, you get bored of that, and that's actually exactly what happened to the OpenClaw guy. He sold his company after 10 years of working on it, got like $200 million, took off and just said, "I'm tired, I'm burnt out." But a year and a half later, he was
just tinkering.
Yes, and then OpenClaw.
So that's you.
Yeah, that's really what happens, and you get bored very easily, and also you are connected to so many people who keep coming and telling you this is what's happening, this is what's happening, this is what's happening.
You feel like you have some FOMO, yeah?
You get that FOMO as well and pulls you back in.
Yeah. So Microsoft, you're doing your thing. So sorry, I don't know the way we talked about this, but what are you doing at Microsoft? Are you doing what you were doing at Cloud?
At Microsoft, we went into what is called basically customer acquisition or customer engineering.
Okay.
And what we were making this is our early AI before this version that we have right now. We're actually working on a platform called a daily recommender.
Recommend engines.
Yes.
No way.
Yes. So
you involved in that?
Yes, but no, not the one for social. But these are internal recommender engines that take all the signals that Microsoft is getting from all of the. We had a signals team that was in the thousands of people. So all those landing pages, all of those, and they bring in all that data.
Is this like the Microsoft ecosystem of websites and everything across all the propositions?
And the partners and all of those. And they bring all those leads in. But when the leads come in, the recommender system is able to kind of triangulate a map and see who is actually a good customer. If they're already existing, that's a good customer. That gives us a point. If they are, so for a salesperson to be really efficient, because Microsoft is so big that they cannot have all the salespeople they need to kind of use the ones they have to.
There's too much surface area, basically.
Absolutely, yes.
So you need to be able to filter.
Absolutely.
And identify.
It's the opposite problem that most companies have. You're trying to get leads. Microsoft is getting too many, and they're trying to hone in on who is worth speaking to and talking to. And that based also on how much they've spent before and all of this. And there's some that will be rerouted to partners because maybe they're a little bit more local. Maybe they need physical hardware. So this system made the sales team so efficient, right? And it was called the Daily Recommender, and I worked on that. And now I can imagine what it is now with some of the breakthroughs that are already in and some of the updates that are in. But that is basically where I spent a lot of time at Microsoft. We also had, program managers that could actually be what they call now forward deployed engineers, people that you send into certain partners and be able to do that. So we gave them a piece of that software as well to kind of use, but it's almost like magic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now we're going to need to move this a bit quicker, but so we're now at Microsoft. What happens next?
So at Microsoft, I was there. It was a kind of boring time, I'll tell you, because it's just this one thing that you're doing. There's a lot of training that happens. But at Microsoft is really when I started kind of thinking about now I have the capacity maybe to take time off and move to Kenya. And I started talking to my family about it. And we just made plans. And at the end of 2024, we basically made the move. So Microsoft was the last place that I worked. I did also do a few gigs at the University of Washington, the graduate school, but that was very much a temporary thing before making the transition to Kenya.
What is the calling? What is the feeling? What is the driver? Was it like, I've done my time in diaspora, I've made my contribution? Was it nostalgia? What's pulling you back?
That's a good question, Moses. It's hard to kind of point out one thing that pulls you back, but it's basically all the above. There's nostalgia, but at the same time, there was also the sense of that I moved to America not as an economic immigrant. I just went there to school. So me coming back, there was just very little friction there. So I did just decide it's just time.
It's just time.
It's just time.
And is it also maybe this feeling that I sometimes I talk to my friends in diaspora.
Yes.
There's almost a sense where I don't know how to call it the African soul or the African psyche.
Yeah.
There's almost like a yearning, a need to be back home.
Yes.
And I see it because when I do visit, and I have visited many friends in diaspora before, you know, it's an interesting life. I mean, they're sort of grinding away. There's no maids. They're taking care of their kids themselves. They have to schedule dates for things.
Yep.
It's a very mechanical, almost robotic
Right,
lifestyle.
right.
Whereas in Africa, I think it's a bit more natural,
little
more
bit,
family oriented.
right.
People slow down a little bit. It's more about values and family. I'm sure that's part of it as well, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a big economy. When you really think about the American economy, it's very, very big. And yes, it is pretty like that.
Yeah.
Right. But that's really not something that, and a lot of people want to come home, but it's very difficult to kind of like unplug from that because you know, you make a lot of money, spend a lot of money, and you live there. So I'm one of the lucky ones, I would say, who have the capacity to be able to make the move. And coming here, it's not easy to make the transition easy.
Yeah.
But you kind of make the move anyway. When things get hard, you have to remind yourself it's home, and that kind of helps you a little bit. But life there was just so normal to me. It's just me adjusting still to life here.
Yeah.
Where these things slow down, and you're kind of like trying to kind of adapt to that, right? Even now, sometimes I feel like I work too hard. It's like, because, you know,
within
like,
this environment.
Yes, I shouldn't. But when I talk to my friends in the States, I realize that, oh, I've really slowed down. You know?
Really?
Yeah. So it's that kind of balance that is hard to achieve.
Yeah, it almost feels like, you know, when you look at a football team and a player starts to get a bit older and they stop being the guy who's running to score the goal, but they're the guy who does the assist pass.
Yes.
Because they've had these 10,000 hours.
Yes.
And they know where to place the ball.
Absolutely.
And get the goal, but they're not going to be the one who shoots
Absolutely.
it. So yeah, I feel like you're kind of at that phase in your life where you're kind of orchestrating, you're watching from a distance. You don't necessarily have the energy or the drive that you did.
Absolutely.
But because we have reasonably little amount of time left, I want us to kind of speed things up a little bit and to come to kind of like what you're doing now and kind of that progression from Microsoft to what you're doing. Because I know you've got DBX Engine.
Yes.
You've got the Agentic. And you've also got the latest thing, which is the ClawFolks.
Yes.
The ClawFolks, sorry.
ClawFolks.
So can you break those down to us? What are they? What do they do? And then we can kind of segue into talking about Agentic things, which is really, I think, kind of like where you are right now.
Absolutely. So I'm just kind of like riding this wave of what's happening right now. I'm keeping tabs with kind of progress that we're making, but we're moving into this agentic world. You know, I try to tell people that you should think of this as maybe the beginning of the internet, when you are interacting with the operating system for the first time, trying to understand what it is. But we are moving into a place where there's no UX required. You don't need to click around to get the job done. And we've been able to capture intelligence in a box, right? And this is very, very, very kind of like credible intelligence that can be able to actually get the job done. So in my master's program, I studied a lot of machine learning, and now it's actually being applied in the real world. So what we created was basically a company around it, basically an extension of what I was doing in Seattle, to bring in these products here sooner rather than later, right? I remember when Windows in '96, when Windows, I interacted with Windows for the first time.
Yeah.
And you know, I still remember the feeling, and I feel like that's the moment we have right now. So with OpenClaw, we really kind of looked at a paradigm shift on how compute is, at least computing is. Instead of you actually going and sit in front of a machine and, you know,
manually prompt it
and just download your brain into it, you can actually give it direction and outcomes and actually have it kind of figure out. And people will be surprised how much code can accomplish. And that's what is actually what's going on right now. You can be able to tell it, go write me an email. And this system can, instead of going to type manually like you do, you can go through the API and just pour the text in and be able to do this. And it can also be able to understand your intent, which is a very, very powerful thing. And as much as it's still early, We are working with a lot of customers in the United States and other countries. I've had customers from Japan, from Germany. And the goal at the end of the day is basically having people here be part of the deployment of this new phase of technology. I feel like there's just so much potential here. I work with my company. I think we have maybe the average age is 23, and that's because I'm in there. Right?
You're the gray hair in the group, yeah?
Yes. And I'm just kind of trying to push them into kind of this new thinking. Also just telling them what it takes to be world class. And most of these people who build these big systems, they're not average. They don't think average. They really put their sweat and tears in there.
You've seen it firsthand,
yes, Yes. And when you see people here do things halfway, and they're like, this one is okay. That's not going to cut it.
Wow. I mean, so what you're saying is that in an organization like Google or Microsoft, what you saw, which exposed you and became, I guess, part of your language and your competence, is that there's this element of almost extreme engineering or extreme quality
excellence.
Yeah, in everything.
In everything. Because when you're really building for the whole world, you kind of have to think about just it being perfect, right? It just has to be perfect. And of course, you come in and you kind of iterate, but it has to be that kind of mentality. Otherwise, people will not adapt it, right? People will not follow your thoughts if they are half-baked. Right.
So are you saying to me, and this may be a controversial part of this conversation, is that when you just look, when you do a sense check of how we are doing things locally, I'm almost hearing you say, Moses, we have levels to still go up to.
Absolutely. I mean, you go open any app from your local bank and see the work they've done there, right? They could have copied some other.
Yeah.
It's okay to
on the
do
UX
that,
and all
right?
that.
It is very much an afterthought. It is almost like a sense of imetosha. This is enough.
People are not going to the extremes.
Yes.
Actually, it's not even extremes. It's almost like to the benchmark. Right?
Absolutely. So things like that. And of course, there's a lot of good work happening as well and people really pushing this. But you kind of have to remove yourself and say, I'm not competing in Nairobi. I'm competing really in the world. So can I be able to drop this piece of software in Korea and people will clamor for it? And the answer is no, right? If the answer is no, then your market is probably not even in Nairobi, because Nairobi also the expectations are changing because they're also using global software.
Yeah, I mean, for me, when I was like, when I think about, say, an application like Uber, the fact that the Uber you use in Kenya is the same as the Uber in San Francisco.
Yeah.
It means that the sensibility around good UX or good digital experiences at the consumer level is already so high. It's elevated because now they're using the same stuff.
Absolutely.
So the moment they have something that sort of fails to meet that benchmark, they can feel it, they sense it.
100%.
A bit of latency when you're trying to tap, they know it.
We're talking about the app from Safaricom.
Yes.
My one app, they call it.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at that app, even the color scheme is off. And it's like, come on, this was meant to impress some boss somewhere, that it just looks like it should be in 2005. It's like,
oh my God,
right? Kind of reduce this. Think about the human is using it, not your brand that you decide to put red and green. Things like this. It's just that kind of polish. And I'm not saying that it's impossible. There are people that are really, really good. So things like OpenClaw are really going to come in and actually disrupt this industry. You're just saying, this is what I want. This is the outcome that I want. And even this system can go think about the app that needs to make this outcome happen. So the programming part will become a background noise or background signal, depending on the quality of your thinking, and the outcome becomes it. So there's a paradigm shift. Even products are going to look different. Again, a UX-less domain will now be, okay, how clear is your thinking? We were talking about this earlier. How clear is your thinking? Can you articulate the problem well and explain how your philosophy to solve it unfolds? Because this thing is so well designed at listening to you and getting the nuances of everything that you're saying. And I think that's what we are moving to. And I don't have the answers. Nobody has. But I am encouraging the people who have that mind. Even right now, I'm actually telling people, if you're not even techie, right, maybe you are really good investor. Maybe you have a good sensibility. That's also a skill. That this thing is going somewhere. Put some money into it, right? Support maybe certain things like this. I'm taking in partners, right? If I can, so that I'm just looking for like-minded people. Nobody's talking about these things. People mention it here and there. I see some posts.
It's a hype. The hype.
It's a hype. You see it on LinkedIn and people talk about it in a very shallow way. But it's like, who is building? Who is breaking this system here? So it's one of those things that I'm trying to be ahead of. This is why, like, we were talking about this not too long ago. I am basically inviting everybody to come in and partner. I don't find many people like you that I can actually talk about this with, at least the technical bits and the depth that you have. And that is actually the thing that I'm struggling with. It's a little bit of a lonely world. It's like, I don't get any feedback. I have to wait till nighttime to call my friends in the States to get some kind of outline. I'm like, okay, tell me what happened today. Tell me
what's going on, what's trending. Yeah.
So I would love to maybe create more of that community here.
Yeah.
That is actually going to move the needle.
I mean, I don't know whether maybe we're doing enough justice to exactly what you're doing, because I think, we've talked about, the ClawBot, right? I mean, what it does, right? It basically takes on the tasks that used to be human and behaves almost like a human, and is able to go in and check your emails and can connect to your computer. It's doing things for you.
Absolutely.
Completely autonomously, just like a self-driven car.
You even get its own phone number. You get its own WhatsApp.
You can talk to it on WhatsApp, etc.
You give it its own email. So it's almost like onboarding an employee. And it is very loyal, and it's very much listening, and it's going to be able to do things. It's still early. It has some memory issues here and there.
Yeah.
They're fixing that every day. So if you get in now and basically deal with some of those issues, by next year, they'll just be nobody who's going to catch you. In fact, let me speak of one thing about this whole agentic era. There's this conversation that I was having with some friends in the United States talking about a permanent underclass. And that is a real thing that most people are really not talking about. That because this intelligence is actually moving at a very, very, very fast pace, that it might trap some people at a level where they can be able to never go above.
Wow.
So, when I hear that, I always think that probably a permanent underclass they might be talking about Africa, because we don't have the infrastructure here. So it really keeps me up at night to where, how do we not become again a permanent underclass like we were maybe in the last cycles of technology, from the Industrial Revolution to the computers and all of this? How can AI be that difference? And AI is very accessible. There's nothing you need to learn. You just have to be a thinker and interact with it. And they actually can be able to kind of get your vision across. So that permanent underclass keeps me up at night, because I feel like if the attitude remains what it is here in Kenya, that it can actually happen, that Africans will be stuck where we are just still paying somebody in the West to be able to participate, but you can never really build anything of your own.
So what are those interventions? What do we need to do? You have the vantage point. You've been there. What are those interventions? Because I imagine there's a government level, there's a business level, there's a policy level.
Yes.
What are those layers that we need to look at?
It's all of it. It's something that is still being debated even in the United States, where people are afraid of being stuck in that class we're talking about. But for Kenya, I would just hope that the leadership here basically opens their minds, invites more people into the fold. Like, I would love to be part. I'm not a political person, but I would walk into any government, whatever it is, and be able to kind of say, maybe there's things that we can be able to do here, because there's just a small window, and that window is going to be gone, right? People who are more forward thinking, maybe some money being invested in some of the younger people to actually experiment with these people. It could just even buying them tokens to play with this. So right now, if somebody cannot afford fare to go home, can you imagine tokens, right? Which just go like this. And it's still expensive now, and it's still being worked so that these AI tokens are lower, but there has to be some kind of intervention to kind of do that. If you go to other countries like China, you sent me an article not too long ago where people were going into the government offices to actually...
And they call them lobsters.
They call them lobsters. But the Chinese are going to adopt it. In the United States, there's a little bit of a pushback to AI. Here, barely nobody talks about it, at least in a coherent way. But I hope that we take this as an opportunity, that we don't fear it, right? Because it's intelligence. There's something unsettling about intelligence that is so smart and it's outside of the human realm. But I hope we kind of change that and make it. So when you talk about the stack that is needed, it's really everything. It is going to be government, it's going to be private sector, it's going to be people who are maybe might be older and don't really get that thing, but really them orient themselves to understand the potential of it.
And even upskill them somehow
Upskill themselves,
to unlearn and relearn.
And it's actually easy to learn, right? In fact, I feel like older people will benefit if they actually jumped into it, because again, those 10,000 hours, some of us have 30, 40, 50,000 hours.
And you can amplify that.
You can amplify that.
Yeah.
And you have more context. And all this thing needs is that context. So it's going to be a shift in really thinking, but it's going to have to come from above, and the money has to kind of do that. You know, I've some country like in Washington, the state of Washington, they bought OpenAI, the $20 one, for everybody in the state.
No way.
Yes. You just have to go through, click a link, boom, it's yours.
Are you saying almost like tokens maybe are the new currency of life?
I was talking to a bank president, I'm not going to mention their name today, and I said, that could be the future of currency, because it's going to come down to almost like the electrical unit, and it's going to become a currency of some sort, at least be attached to some kind of a regular currency, I feel.
You know, it's so funny. I've been using cloud a lot in the last 2 months or so. I've actually almost permanently transitioned to cloud.
Yes.
If I told you what I've spent on tokens,
me too.
It's almost sad, but it's reached a point where the moment I get the notification that I'm out, I immediately top up and I keep going, because I literally cannot do my work without cloud anymore.
It is going to encompass labor. Labor is everything, really, when you really think about it. In fact, that's where there's a lot of conversation going on beyond the technology of what is the future going to look like if your computer can do most of the economic work? Well, you know, so the UBI talk comes in, and again, that's UBI in the United States. Here, nobody's talking about anything like that. So we are kind of far, and it's something that I think about a lot, and I don't have all the answers right now.
Yeah.
But I want to be part of that solution, because this is more of a dialogue, right? I was on a talking circuit 2 years ago. We're talking to Borax, which is the organization for architects. And I was talking about these things, but it just did not land, because at that time they're thinking like, oh, this is not going to happen, right?
Yeah.
But it's here now. And I hope whoever is listening to this would join hands. If you have the resources, put them into the pot. If you have the mind, put it into the pot. If you are running a company that is tech-centric, bring that prowess and try to do something with it. Right now, it is going to be literally this, it's almost like this speeding train. You see it coming and you see it going.
Yeah.
Right? So it has to, you kind of have to attack the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dennis, it seems that we're almost out of time.
Yes.
And I think there are two things I'd like us to discuss now. One is, if people want to find out more about Agentic AI and the stuff that you're doing, especially with the ClawFolks,
Yes.
maybe tell them a little bit about that and what the value proposition behind that is. And maybe the last thing would be, what would you advise any young person today in Kenya or Africa in this agentic era to do, where things like Clawbot is going to be the norm? How should they be preparing for that? What can they do to start positioning themselves to be a part of that?
That's a great question. As far as the agentic work, there are many agents, you know. OpenClaw is open source, so it's free. And you can be able to look at it, and you can be able to kind of study it. So that's the one that we are right now. If you go to agentic.us, that is Agentyc, agentic.us. We are built, basically, we went to AWS, we rented some servers, and we basically optimized them for OpenClaw. So if you're looking to get started with OpenClaw, you know, you can be able to reach out to me, and I'm also on LinkedIn. We can be able to kind of create this for you. What I would advise, and again, it's still experimental. Get in there while it's breaky, right? And just get good. As far as any young person trying to get into this, is the only advice I can give them is get into it. Right?
Just do it like Nike.
Yes. If you can figure out to install it yourself, do that. If you need help, come to us. We can find a way to do it at a at a way it's affordable to you. But engage with this thing, deal with the problems it has, and you're going to be basically way far ahead of this. This is a very primitive version. It's the worst it's going to be. We have models coming out, I think, this spring. Spring is around this time, that are going to be way a step function above what is still amazing today. So, really, that's what I would say. And if you're an investor, start thinking about this. Don't think of technology as apps and all of these things that you know. It's really moving into things that are able to think, plan, and do. In fact, these systems are very good at planning. So be part of that as well. Take that as inspiration and plan as well on how you can be able to unfold this. The information is there. Go to YouTube, pick up a few articles and all of this, and you're going to figure it out. It's not complex at all. In fact, this is the easiest version of technology that we're going into. You don't need to learn the servers and all of this. It is really connected to your WhatsApp or your Telegram. You just talk to it. It goes and does the job. If there's recurring tasks, you can be able to actually tell it, every Wednesday, I want this report at this time. And it goes out there on the internet. It's able to actually go browse the internet and bring you live information. It's amazing in that way. And it's still so primitive. So get in and try to figure it out. I think that's really the advice I would give.
Dennis, thank you so much. It looks like we're out of time. Really appreciate this. Thank you so much for making the time to be with us, because I know this request came a bit late.
It's okay.
And for me, I'm particularly excited because I really do feel this agentic era that is now coming into focus is going to be a game changer for everyone.
Absolutely.
And those who sort of figure out how to play with it, use it, learn how it works, even at this early phase, potentially will be the leaders of the next era of computing. So thank you so much for coming through with all these insights.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
Yeah.
And if an opportunity comes up as this thing is evolving, maybe we can get back together and maybe there's a big gap.
Oh yeah, I'm already thinking about the second podcast. And I think what that podcast is going to be more about going deeper into what Agentic AI means and the key considerations going forward. So if anything, maybe another week or two we'll be back here now going much deeper into that.
Absolutely, we can do that.
Yeah.
We can do that. Thank you, Moses. I really appreciate you. You're a great, great gentleman. and I appreciate that you gave me basically a platform to bounce my ideas off of. And I also read your stuff. I follow your podcast.
Oh, thank you.
And you are in fact, you are the person I respect because you're basically pulling this whole subject matter across a population that maybe barely kind of gets to interact with it. So good job.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Absolutely. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So there you've heard it from Denis Bundi, who's really given us some insights into his life journey. At sort of 17 years old, living Kenya, going to the US, working in incredible companies as an engineer, places like Texas Instruments, BMC Software, Microsoft, Google, and of course now what he's doing with the Agentic AI space, where he's working with OpenClaw and doing a whole bunch of other things with that. And I think this is really an important conversation to really sort of set the tone around what potentially is going to be the most consequential moment in the computing sort of timeline that we're living in right now. But more importantly, for markets like Kenya and Africa, where we do not want to be on the sort of the back end of this, we really want to be the front end. And I think people like Denis, who have that vantage point coming from the US, from some of the top companies, where all of these innovations are coming out of, how can we as Africa, as Kenya, be able to take advantage of these potential opportunities that could be game changers. So thank you very much for joining us for this conversation with Denis Bundi. We hope we'll catch you in the next one.